Logan, look, if you're watching this, and I know you are because we know you're a fan of the show, you know, feel free to have us on. You know,
We're willing to give you a platform, Logan.
We will not insist on a first class ticket to America, but we might take business. Is what I'm trying to say.
Religion, faith, whatever you want to call it, has led to the deaths of too many people, has led to the trauma of too many children. Ooh. And I've just been not shut off to the idea, but turned off momentarily.
Yeah. Okay, so he's, said something which a lot of people raise, which is surely religion has caused a lot of turmoil and discord in the world, and a lot of people have died as because of it, and a lot of kids have been brainwashed or, grow up in distress because of it. So how can it be a good thing? So why should I even bother looking into it? It's basically the idea. What are your initial thoughts to that?
Two things. One, that his objections can be applied to any ideology. That's the first thing. So you could say, well, America went to war in Iraq on the basis of spreading democracy, therefore democracy is a bad idea.
Right.
Not quite.
So if you do something bad in the name of something else, that doesn't necessarily mean that thing is bad.
No, because, and actually, if you were to take that position, you couldn't hold anything as good, because evil acts are always committed in the name of things which are good, ostensibly. Otherwise,
right.
they don't have any, nobody, this is, the funny joke we always make that, you make very, very eloquently in your articles and things, which is that Star Wars and Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings, it's all rubbish, because, they all depict the bad guys as people who know that they're bad. Whereas that's not
the Dark Lord. I'm practicing
the Dark Lord,
dark
the evil
magic
ones, calling to the dark side. And, this is all nonsense. The people who sit on the evil side, they are always saying that we are the good guys. Okay? Yeah. So, and there's always a fight between two people who are both trying to represent themselves as the agents of light and of goodness. Okay?
Yeah.
So, so then saying that, people who have believed in a particular religious ideologies and philosophies, they've committed evils. Well, yeah, fine. What's the big deal? Like, obviously it's not good that they've committed those evils, but the question is, did the religion teach that? That's the question. If the religion teaches those evils, then yes, abandon that teaching 100%. But if the religion doesn't teach those evils and people committed those evils in the name of that religion, well, does that mean you're going to throw away every other good concept that exists for which people have committed evils in the name of?
Yeah.
Obviously
Freedom,
not. That would be
democracy.
A pretty stupid idea.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's really good. And also, like you said, like you've alluded to, well, actually, it's a separate point, actually, which is the fact that the biggest wars in human history were political wars. The world wars weren't religious wars. So you're going to get rid of, politics and all the different political ideologies that led to that. And then there's the other point, which I think is a very strong point, which is the fact that if you're gonna blame an ideology, let's look at Soviet Russia and let's look at atheism, right? Because atheists and explicit atheism, which was the doctrine of the Soviet Union, killed literally tens of millions of people, really more than any other ideology in human history.
People have no idea what the Soviet Union did to the Ukrainians. They should look
to their
up
own people.
And to their own people. They have no idea of the extent of the famine that they created and the perpetuation of it and the mass amount of death. And the most horrific video I ever saw on YouTube, and there are a lot of horrific videos on YouTube, the singularly most horrific one I ever saw was, well, there's actually two videos now, okay, both about the Soviet Union. One was a video of literally the people who are dying in the famines created by the mismanagement and deliberate actions of the Soviet Union to starve people into submission. And the second was a description of the Soviet soldiers and what they did to German women when they entered into Berlin. I mean, I can't talk about it. It was an interview of an ex-Soviet soldier describing what they did to German women. And it was so horrific. I've never come across anything like that. And that was committed fundamentally because they were within an ideology generally and in a specific situation, both of which taught them that they did not have any accountability for their actions. Okay.
Yeah.
So the ideology they had was that they're an atheistic framework, which basically, unless the state or other human beings are going to regulate you,
aggressively atheistic as well.
It was aggressively atheistic state, the Soviet Union, and which basically the meaning of that is that unless other human beings are going to regulate you in terms of a government or a society, it basically means you are ungoverned, you are unaccountable for your actions, that you can get away with stuff if other human beings let you get away with it. A religious belief, whatever it be, now we can all come together now from a religious perspective, whether you're a Christian, whether you're a Hindu, whether you're a Muslim, they all have a common thread, which is that you will be held accountable at some level, in some way. Okay, whether it's through reincarnation or through judgment after death or through whatever, you will be held accountable by an all-knowing, all-pervasive God who sees beyond your actions into your very thoughts themselves. Okay. Now, with atheism, you have a completely unaccountable moral philosophy. And accountability, whether human beings like it or not, whether philosophers who think that they're so enlightened like it or not, human beings need accountability and a belief in accountability to behave properly. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's the big difference. The big difference, true religious ideology and an irreligious ideology, even if it poses itself in the garb of religious identity.
Yeah, that's very well said. That's very well said. What you just said there reminded me, talking about the philosophers who think that they can do away with accountability. One thing, just a side note, which I found out, which was J.S. Mill, John Stuart Mill, who was a great moral philosopher and a great philosopher in the British tradition. And he's lauded as extremely civilized guy. When he wasn't writing philosophy, when he wasn't writing philosophy books, he was moonlighting as the chief lawyer for the British East India Company, and trying to get them off for their crimes in India. And even by then, like the whole of Parliament and the rest of British society was like, these people are awful. Why are you defending this horrific company that's done awful things? And he's talking about don't your rights extend to the nose of someone else. It's a good example of the fact that the moral philosophy is not really something which changes people. A belief in accountability and a belief that you'll be judged for your actions, and on the positive side, that you will attain God's love if you treat God's creation in a beneficent way, is far more powerful as an actor, as an agent of change in someone. Now, as you said, if you don't follow that, then that's not the religion's fault, that's the individual's fault. And if the religions say, don't do these things, and a bunch of people go and do that in the name of that religion, don't blame the religion, blame those individuals, because God has given us free will. And most of the prophets said that, people who claim to follow my teaching will go astray, and that they will not follow it, and there'll be a certain segment of them that will rebel against it. And they warned against that. So it's not something new. Now, a lot of people, the last thing I want to say on this, unless you have something else, is that some people will say you're unfairly blaming atheism. Like, atheism doesn't teach you to do any evil. It doesn't have that, it can't be blamed for that. And in one aspect, that's true. It doesn't explicitly teach you that, but it doesn't teach you anything. It's a moral vacuum, as you pointed out, and thus enables those things to be plausible. Because if you are truly an atheist, there is no real such thing as right or wrong. There is survival of the fittest. There is dominion, right? Because right and wrong don't really exist as moral concepts. We're just these evolved apes who have developed it right and wrong because maybe it gives you some survival advantage. But if you're enlightened enough to know that, then you're also enlightened enough to discard that and think, well, okay, mate.
Nicely put, man. Nicely put. That was hot. That was.
Thanks for being subtle about that.
That was a nice way to put it. That was good. If we'll say it again, if you're enlightened enough to know that, you're enlightened enough to discard that.
Right.
It's true.
Yeah. Which is because then basically your moral impulses are things to get over. Right. It's okay. Well, I've got these stupid evolved things I have to get over if I want to do the things that I really enjoy. I need to get over this moral sense.
Yeah, and people do.
Atheism enables you to do that.
Yeah, people do. They're like, I don't want to have kids. I don't care what my genes tell me. I don't want to have kids. It doesn't suit my lifestyle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean that's a fairly minor thing in terms of on the moral scale of things.
No, I know, but the point I'm making is that invariably it's that position take. I don't want kids. It doesn't suit my lifestyle. They're going fundamentally against their so-called survival instinct there. Okay.
Yeah.
And human beings can do that. And that is exactly what we do on a regular basis, on the regular. So we make conscious decisions which don't tally with the concept of survival of the fittest. So if you believe that right and wrong have only evolved for the purpose of survival of the fittest, there's no reason why you can't discard it when it doesn't suit you. What actually
because it may be advantageous in the group, a moral philosophy may be advantageous in the group, but actually as an individual, you can hack the system and actually really enjoy yourself and be completely hedonistic. So again, atheism enables these things, whereas religion doesn't. And it's like that, but David Belinsky thing, where he says, why don't you say the story? I know you enjoy saying it.
Yeah, I do like this story. So David Belinsky, he points out, I think it was in debate with Christopher Hitchens, he points out that if an old woman is hobbling across the road with a cane, with a walking stick, bent over, struggling to get to the other side while a car waits for her, do you think that her progress will be improved by you coming along and kicking away the stick? Okay. So if humanity is hobbling along the question of and the quest of moral progress with the belief that they will be held accountable for their actions by an all-knowing, all-powerful being, right? If with that belief we're struggling to get to the other side of the road, is the removal of that belief going to necessarily harm or help or hinder humanity to get to the other side of the road? It's obviously going to hinder them. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's a lovely way that Belinsky put it, which is that the question as to whether religion is a positive force or a negative force doesn't even bear regarding. It's such a silly question when you look at it at the face value. This is another point I think I want to point out, which is that people will then ask, well, what about all these Muslim majority nations and religious populations who are barbaric in their eyes, they're completely lawless, etc. Well, firstly, people say that kind of thing when they've never actually visited places that are poorer than their own country. That's the first thing. But that is the impression that people in the West have, that North Africa, West Africa, full with religious people who are uneducated and backwards. A lot of people think like that, sadly.
Yeah, or the Muslim countries are oppressive, that kind of thing.
Or the Muslim countries, filled with barbarians who want to deny women their rights and stop them driving and all the kinds of things, right? So the question, and then they say, well, look, you're Scandinavia, that illustrious city on the hill that shines beautifully for the whole world to see. That they're all full of atheists, and look how wonderfully they're doing. And actually, what people don't realize is that, again, that proves the point for us, not for them, which is that the nations that are atheistic in their terms of the majority of their population, but they are progressing well as a civilization, it is because they have entrenched accountability into their systems of governance and into their public institutions and into the roles and responsibilities of individual citizens to other human beings. In other words, human beings are accountable in those situations and in those societies more than in the so-called religious societies, which are poorer, more degenerate in terms of material wealth and have poorer systems of governance. What you really need to be afraid of is a fully atheistic society where the rules of civilization and accountability to other human beings break down. If that happens in a country full of religious believers, you're still going to see some question of accountability because they still believe in God is going to hold them accountable if they go and rob their neighbor's car or siphon their fuel off or steal their food supplies. Okay. And so they don't do that, or a lot of them don't do that, or enough people don't do that it regulates behavior. But if you go to your atheistic society and you see a breakdown of society there, what are you going to see? You're going to see pure and utter anarchy. It's going to be literally people fighting for their lives. Because the only check on accountability for those human beings, which is accountability to other human beings through a decent police force, through a decent governance system, okay, through the social contract that they have, that the government will provide me with this and I will be able to achieve this with my life, and therefore, okay, I will follow the system because it works for me in some abstract sense. That's why people behave. When you have the breakdown of that social contract, when the government can no longer provide you the basic provisions for the majority of the population, which is atheistic, you just watch how quickly that situation turns south. It will be fast.
So I think also another point which is worth mentioning is that these countries didn't become so advanced when they were super atheistic as well. they became advanced when they generally had some semblance of Christianity in them, when they had some semblance of religion. So you can't even attribute their progress to their atheism, because the atheism succeeded the actual civilizational progress. It didn't precede it.
I wouldn't even make that argument, because frankly, they attained their wealth through
plunder.
Through plunder. So.
Yeah, and that's a whole nother thing is, you look at who's been supported in the governments in Muslim majority nations. It's been the West. They've been supporting many tyrannical governments around the world, including many.
Yeah, that's
Muslim
not to say the
ones.
Muslims are angels and that they've behaved well, but
No, but there are wider there's a wider geopolitical context which leads to the state of a country. But obviously, you can only be corrupted if you're corruptible. So the Muslims certainly have accountability there as well.
And as for the question of the plunder of the nations and things like that and accountability, you look at the one nation and the one people will say, well, hold on, like you just said, the European nations that attained their wealth, they did so while they were all fully Christian. So what's that about? They were religious. Well, Christianity is actually kind of like it's kind of the exception that proves the rule in a sense, because Christianity is the one religion that teaches you that if you believe in Jesus, he has died for your sins and you are no longer accountable for them.
Yes.
It's the one religion out of all the religions that teaches you that you will actually not be held accountable through the profession of faith in Jesus Christ, right? Because he has already died for your sins. If you said to all the criminals in the street, in the prison, don't worry, guys, all of your sentences have been commuted to nil, okay?
Yeah.
And you can't commit any kind of action anymore, which is going to get you into a jail term. Because all of your future jail terms have already been paid by, poor Joe Schmo here in Block Cell B. Okay, okay, he's going to live for a long time. We've made sure of it, and he's going to live out all your sentences. Then you just watch how quickly those criminals behave badly.
Yeah,
So people say, well, what about Christianity? If they were Christian at the time, yeah, they were Christian, but funnily enough, that's the one moral philosophy that does the exact opposite of what a religious philosophy should have done.
Yeah, and as for people of other faiths who have also committed those crimes, they're explicitly doing it in spite of their religious teachings, not because of their religious teachings. But as you said, with Christianity, you could argue quite successfully that it's an inherently permissive teaching, even though Jesus said follow the commandments and said follow, God's commandments. The Pauline doctrines don't tally with that, and modern Christianity doesn't follow Jesus' teachings in that respect.
Yeah.
So yeah, I hope that answers the question. But I mean, overall, I've been, I've Logan Paul he's not a scholar of religion, but he's got.
Yeah, we've kind of laid into the poor guy, haven't we?
No, not at all. I think he's answering. I don't think he'd be upset with that. He's asking earnest and genuine and good questions, which he's absorbed from the culture and from his own experience.
Logan, look, if you're watching this, and I know you are because we know you're a fan of the show, feel free to have us on. We're
willing to give you a platform, Logan.
We will not insist on a first class ticket to America, but we might take business. Is what I'm trying to say.
We'd be happy to give him a platform and to help him to grow his channel.
Yeah, 100%. Help him to grow his 141,000 views on one clip. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks very much for watching. You guys at home, make sure that you comment, that you like, and that you subscribe to Below. Our episodes can be found in podcast format as well. We also have a website, rationalreligion.co.uk, where you can check out all of our content. We have everything listed in a topic index, videos and articles, and also find us on all the various social media sites. So until next time, peace be upon you, and to my brother, peace be upon you.